Good morning, everybody, and welcome. This is the right way to start the year. I'm Darrell Steinberg, President Pro Tem of the California State Senate. I'm joined by a number of my colleagues who I will be introduced in a moment, along with our Superintendent, of course, of Public Instruction, Tom Torlakson, and as well as the Police Chief, Robert Leno from Elk Grove. I want to introduce a couple of the dignitaries who aren't going to be speaking, but that they are no less important in terms of the effort that we undertake today. I want to welcome Dr. Sarah Noguchi, who's the interim superintendent of the Sac City Unified School District, Tiffany Smith-Simmons, the principal of Harkness Elementary School, Maggie Steele of the California PTA, Tony Rice from the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce. Yes, we are engaging in a statewide effort here. Professor David Kerp, renowned author from the University of California at Berkeley, Deborah Kong, president of Early Edge California, and a whole host of other folks who have been in these trenches for a long time. Let me tell you why we are here, and then I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent and my colleagues. You know that governors and legislatures have spent decades endeavoring to improve K-12 education in California. We've worked to improve test scores, to increase teacher quality, to improve per-pupil funding, to reduce truancy and dropouts. Most recently, we've asked the question in the Senate and with the superintendent, what are we teaching in the classroom and why are we teaching it? Those fundamental questions produced API reform and last year's Career Pathway Trust. And last year, in partnership with the governor and the assembly and the superintendent, we achieved landmark legislation to deliver a simpler, more effective way to fund our schools through the local control funding formula, otherwise known as the LCFF. It raised per pupil spending statewide, and most importantly, it directed additional funding to the children who needed it most to help bridge the achievement gap in California. We are all proud of this reform, but its implementation is merely the beginning, not the end. For the LCFF represents great progress, but also unfinished business. No funding formula will help a struggling third grader who is already trailing his peers in literacy and language skills. No funding formula will prevent a 16-year-old from dropping out of high school because she fell behind years earlier. No funding formula addresses the reality that the achievement gap is formed well before children arrive in kindergarten. You'll hear about the studies today that low-income children by age 5 are more than 2 years behind in language development. Children who do not read proficiently by the 3rd grade are 4 times more likely to not graduate from high school on time. Only one half of California's low-income preschool-age children are served in state preschool or Head Start, and only 1/4 are currently eligible for the Transitional Kindergarten program authored by Senator Simitian back in 2011. Now is the time to make a wise long-term investment in Transitional Kindergarten for all. And so today we introduce Senate Bill 837, the Kindergarten Readiness Act, which makes 1 year of voluntary, high-quality transitional kindergarten available to every 4-year-old in California to bridge the achievement gap so that all children have access to success in school. This bill will provide all 4-year-olds with high-quality, developmentally appropriate transitional kindergarten. It will combine the best quality standards from the current TK and state preschool and create a model that will result in sustainable gains in school performance. It's really not the creation of a new program. It is the expansion of the transitional kindergarten program that already serves 1/4 of the 4-year-olds. We intend to deliver one of the highest quality kinder readiness programs in the country. Yes, we have to be wise about how we deal with our budget surplus. and we are committed to paying down debt. We are committed to putting money in a rainy day fund. And yes, we politicians like to talk about investment. We don't like the word spending. And this is an investment, but let me tell you something. I'm proud to call this wise spending in California. There are few better uses of the taxpayer dollars than investing in evidence-based change, providing young people, 4-year-olds, the head start that they need. I was thinking in conclusion about the governor, who was a great champion, is a great champion for changing the education system, and of course led the way when it came to the LCFF. And the governor, in another context, when talking about another kind of investment in California, talked about the dystopians and the declinists. Those who are unwilling to see the connection between stepping out, taking a chance, investing in the long term, having a vision, and what taking that chance can mean and would mean to the future of California. And I think that if there's any controversy about cost here, the same logic applies. Whether you look at the 2008 study on the lasting effects of preschool education, the Chicago study that said preschool education reduces special education placements by 10%. We spend $8 billion in state, federal, and local funds a year on special education placements. That's $800 million savings doing the simple math. This is something we must do, and we must do now. Let me turn it over to the Superintendent of Public Instruction, our friend who's been a partner in all of this and been a great leader, Tom Torlakson. Tom, welcome to you, sir.
Thank you, Pro Tem Steinberg, and I'm extremely pleased to be here to support this legislation, this historic initiative, and very pleased to be co-sponsoring the legislation along with our great coalition of early learners who will be introduced in a few minutes. Transition kindergarten and early learning are a huge part, a fundamental part, a formative part of a child's future and the future of the state of California. The legislation that the legislature passed to put transitional kindergarten in place was a major step in the right direction towards helping our kids succeed in school. This plan will be taking shape in the months and weeks ahead. There are many issues to work out, but as the great leader of the Senate has just pointed out, there is a vision and there is a will. There's a determination, and the author of this bill, of course, has boundless determination to see this happen. We know that expanding access to all 4-year-olds is more than just smart. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for those children and for their families. There are literally decades of strong research in this topic. For instance, Dr. James Heckman, a Nobel laureate in economics, notes the very clear link between strong early childhood programs and California's competitiveness. It's a simple choice: invest in kids now and reap the rewards of a better educated and more productive workforce in a healthier state, or pay the price later with more high school dropouts and more young people dropping into trouble, gangs, drugs, and jail. Every dollar we invest in early learning helps close the achievement gap and lower the dropout rate. Dr. Heckman and others have asserted that $7 is saved for every dollar invested in quality early learning. So supporting this initiative, I am reorganizing within the Department of Education, California Department of Education, to reorganize the department to underscore the importance of these early years, in particular to recognize transitional kindergarten as a major component of a comprehensive early learning system. In California, we know we're doing this right. Literally, for decades, our diverse and high-quality early learning system has been a model for the nation. We have emphasized that preschool and early learning must be more than babysitting, must be more than watching our cartoon friends, Barney and Elmo. It's about learning. It's about a chance to build your capacity. It's about a chance to build your vocabulary. And we're here in a library with these collections of knowledge, discoveries, imagination. We are excited about the prospect of turning those numbers around that Darrell Steinberg just shared with us, that show that students who don't have a quality early learning experience fall behind. They may have 1/4 the vocabulary of their peers when they come into school. They may not be proficient in reading, and therefore, by 3rd grade, they are more likely later to drop out. So we're extremely pleased to be here today with this coalition that Darrell Steinberg has assembled. Early Edge California will be recognized as a key co-sponsor here. And everyone here who's made the care and education of children their life's work, we're extremely excited to work with you. We have education leaders here, none so strong as Carol Liu, our great senator and chair of education. She's been a valiant champion for these investments in early learning for years. And so I now turn it over to our Senator Carol Liu, chair of the Education Committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom, very much. Good morning. Boy, it's a quiet crowd. Early learning, early childhood learning is one of my highest priorities, and it is a pleasure for me to join you today, this morning, to discuss ECE. What is being proposed is very, very exciting. I'm passionate about ensuring all children have access to early education. The evidence is clear, as has been spoken. High-quality early learning leads to improved later learning and life outcomes. Investment now will pay off in long-term benefits for our students and the economy. It's about connecting the dots. It's about leading for the future. It's about saving state expenditures spent on remediation, on criminal justice, and social services. And these are the reasons why I'm an advocate for early ed and also for professional development for early childhood education providers. As you've heard from Senator Steinberg and the superintendent at Sen, there is an overwhelming body of research that supports the importance of these programs. And with this bill, SB 837, we intend to take the measured steps necessary to improve outcomes for California's children. This means an evolution and massive expansion of transitional kindergarten classrooms. California's existing pre-kindergarten program provides a good service with limited resources. But this proposal will result in better quality and more access to traditional kindergarten for all 4-year-olds. Our TK for All proposal reduces transitional kindergarten class sizes from 24 to 20, with 2 teachers in each classroom, providing 1 teacher for every 10 kids. This gives students more opportunities to have meaningful interactions with their teachers and peers. In order to give students the best programming possible, we need a workforce specially trained to address the social and cognitive needs of our earliest and youngest learners. And under SB 837, teachers will hold a credential and have completed 24 units in early education, while associate teachers will hold an associate degree and have 24 units in early education as well. And these teachers will then fill an estimate 8,000 new teaching positions and 12,000 new associate teaching positions. All of this means better opportunities, better outcomes for California's children. Our TK for All proposal would meet at least 8 of the 10 quality benchmarks set for pre-kindergarten programs by the National Institute for Early Education Research. And such an achievement would make California's Kinder Readiness Program one of the highest quality in the nation, a monumental first step forward toward leading the nation in education. And I'm honored to be a joint author on this impressive piece of legislation. Look forward to the continuing work of the expansion of ECE and opportunities for all children, and really want all of your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much, Senator Liu. We've gathered essentially the Senate education leadership here today. Obviously, all the caucus members are committed to improving public education, but these are the folks in the lead positions. And I want to turn it over to the chair of the Budget Subcommittee on Education, Senator Marty Block. There you go, buddy.
It's an honor to be here with the Pro Tem and the State Superintendent and my colleagues in the Senate, and with the many educators who are here in this beautiful facility, this library, which is really the heart of any good school. When you look at the buildings, I like to think about pre-K education or transitional kindergarten education as building a foundation, a sound foundation. No matter how well we construct buildings, no matter how talented the construction workers may be, if beautiful buildings stand on a weak foundation, they're going to crumble. They're not going to be successful. Same thing for our kids. We need to make sure they get a solid start. When Jerry Hill and I came to the Assembly 5 years ago, we had a $42 billion budget deficit. Finally, now we're coming out of deficit years. We're able to restore programs, and we're able to look at new programs that will work and give us more efficiency. That's what this transitional kindergarten will do. As you've heard from the pro tem and others, for every dollar we spend, we hope to save $7 in the future. The governor, who is very intent on saving money, on making sure that we don't overspend, hopefully sees this not as a spending program, but as a true investment in the future of California, the future of our children, and in fact, a mechanism for saving dollars in the long term. The Kindergarten Readiness Act will be a 5-year phased-in program, the finances of which will be basically taking dollars out of Prop 98, about $198 million a year over the next 5 years to fund this program. Again, $198 million per year during the next 5 years to fund this program. The funding would come from average daily attendance, which is how most K-12 programs are funded. One thing this would allow us to do is free up some federal funding that's now being used for pre-K, for childhood education, free that up for earlier years, for kids who are 2 or 3 or 4 years old, early 4-year-old, to get a head start in their education. It doesn't take any funds away from existing state contracted child development programs, and it reduces the cost per child of transitional kindergarten by creating a 2-session model where you're able to actually educate twice as many children in the same facility with the same teachers by having 2 sessions a day for children. I think as budget chair, we have clearly a fiscal obligation and indeed a moral obligation to make sure that all California's children have the foundation they need to build a strong educational career, a strong life for themselves and their families. We either pay now or we have to pay later. So again, to me as budget chair, this is a very sound investment of our future, one that will save us a great deal of money in the long term. Thank you.
Next is Senator Jerry Hill.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. I appreciate it, and I'm truly honored to be here today with my colleagues, with the Pro Tem and the Superintendent, and the wonderful educators. As someone who has a teaching credential in secondary education, I know how difficult, how challenging, and how passionate the profession is for everyone. I'm here for a number of reasons. One is how strongly I support transitional kindergarten. But going back a number of years when I was studying and trying to get that teaching credential, I knew then, and this is many years ago, the value of preschool, the value of a transitional kindergarten and that early education. 25 years ago, as working in a local school district trying to gain and to increase early learning centers in the elementary schools in that district, we knew then the value, what the investment was. That 7-to-1 ratio, we knew about it in those days. Many years ago. Why we haven't done something about that, why we haven't consistently made that a priority, I don't know, because we're seeing the effects of that everywhere in our society. In 2011, when my predecessor, Senator Simitian, established the first transitional kindergarten program for kids who turned 4 between September and December, and since then, there's been a debate in my Senate district about whether school districts are required to offer transitional kindergarten. Two school districts in my district, Los Lomitas and Menlo Park City Schools, have interpreted the law to be voluntary and are not offering a transitional kindergarten program, causing children in San Mateo County to miss out on a critical developmental window. The fact that two school districts aren't offering the program creates haves and have-nots, children who can benefit from the program and those who will be left out. And we all know that those who are left out of this program, those 4-year-olds who are left out, are the ones who need it the most. This isn't right, and it was my intent, and I think all of us in 2011 when we voted for the transitional kindergarten, that it would be mandatory. We know the investment is a valuable one and that it pays great dividends in the long run. Transitional kindergarten and pre-K programs have been shown to increase, as we've heard, academic outcomes, reduce educational disparities, and reduce state costs. This program, when it is enacted fully for all 4-year-olds, will go such a long way in closing that achievement gap that we've all struggled with, we've all heard about, we've all lived with for many, many years. This is the answer, and I'm honored to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Next one introduced, thank you, Senator Hill. I want to introduce the chair of the Legislative Latino Caucus. Fights for all kids, but puts a real spotlight on the challenges and the opportunities for English language learners. Senator Ricardo Lara.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. Excuse my sinus infection. I'm still transitioning to Sacramento from LA. It's great to be here. I'm proud to be here as chairman of the Latino Legislative Caucus and as a senator that represents one of the best school districts in California, Long Beach Unified, where they continue to impress upon the state the need for transitional kindergarten. I had the opportunity to visit Garfield Elementary School in West Long Beach, where really impressed me with the level of quality of service they're providing for transitional kindergarten. I'm also here because half of the students in our public schools today, 50% of those kids are of Latino descent in California, with the overwhelming majority of those being English language learners. And study after study shows that English language learners continue to fall behind. We've put money into classrooms, we've refurbished buildings, we've worked on all these other issues, but English language learners continue to fall behind. And one of those sources of the problem is the lack of traditional kindergarten in our schools. We need to ensure that these kids continue. We know that if they do not have access to TK, they continue to fall behind. And if you're an English language learner, if you're a poor student, you'll even fall further behind. And so it is important for us to move this measure forward to ensure that English language learners have an opportunity to succeed and that poor kids and Latino kids continue to succeed in California. It behooves us. And as we do not expand TK, we are on the long road going to suffer economically, and California will not continue to be the leader if we do not invest in half of our student population, which is Latino and English language learner students. I'm proud to be here with my Senate colleagues. I'm proud to be here with our Superintendent of Public Instruction, and look forward to a healthy debate on how we provide transitional kindergarten to all California students. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Lara. And last but not least among my legislative colleagues, she comes to the Senate with a well-earned reputation for fighting to end child poverty. The chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, Senator Holly Mitchell.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. I'm proud to stand here with my new Senate colleagues, not only as chair of Black Caucus, but as someone who, before running for public office, spent the last 10 years leading the largest child development organization in the state of California, where we facilitated care to about 35,000 kids on a daily basis. And so I come to this coalition very eager to roll up my sleeves and get to work for a number of reasons. Over the last 3 to 4 budget cycles, because of the state's deficit situation, because of our inability to find another solution, we cut over $100 million out of early care and education programs. So I think it's important as we talk about this legislation and a broader package that will not only include transitional kindergarten, but also address the 0 to 3 population, because the unique thing about childhood is you don't get a do-over. The children who lost those services the last 3 to 4 years don't get to repeat their toddler years. And so we have to play catch up. And so what's going to be critical is that we talk about this as an investment, that we acknowledge the fact that $100 million was cut out of a system that has really compromised the core integrity of our early care and education system across the state of California. So it's going to be our collective responsibility to reinvest in rebuilding a strong, high-quality early care and education system for our 0 to 3 kids, for our transitional kindergarten kids, to make sure that California continues to be on the cutting edge of creating a wraparound, comprehensive system that meets the needs of working families, I don't know how many of you working moms here can use a high-quality childcare that's 3 hours a day. We need a wraparound system that meets the needs of working families and, most importantly, helps create the next generation of thought leaders in California. Dr. Maria Montessori, who at the time was considered a very provocative thought leader in early care and education, has this amazing quote that I'm going to butcher, but I'll paraphrase it, where she talks about children are entitled to our respect. And they're entitled to our respect for a number of reasons. First of all, they've maintained their innocence, and their future is unpredictable and bright, and we're all dependent on them having bright, innovative, thriving futures for the future of California. And so, based on that core fundamental belief, it goes without saying that supporting this bill, supporting the package that will make sure that we create a level playing field for all California's young people, to make sure that they can be successful when they enter a very demanding kindergarten year, is what our collective responsibility is. So I'm proud to join with my Senate colleagues to make sure that kids from 0 to 5 have the best possible opportunity in the great state of California.
Thank you. Very well said by all of my colleagues, and I appreciate it. Let me now introduce, and then we'll open it up for questions, the police chief of Elk Grove, Robert Lehner. I don't think I need to explain why it's important that we have somebody from a leader in law enforcement here. It's pretty self-explanatory, but he will explain it. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Senator just mentioned a lot of professional educators here, a lot of legislators with education as their passion. Why the cop? Why am I here? My name is Bob Lehner. I'm the police chief in Elk Grove. I'm a member, have been for over 10 years, of an organization called Fight Crime, Invest in Kids. That is a national organization composed of about 5,000 police chiefs, prosecutors, other law enforcement professionals nationwide, and about 400 or so in California. The reason this organization exists and the reason that we are members is that ultimately, through all of that research, what we learn is that early childhood attention, and in this case education, is a critically important component to crime prevention going forward. Crime prevention programs are something a little bit in more my area of expertise and specialty. I know that to be able to bring crime prevention programs to any community and to communities at large, you have to have a very comprehensive approach to that. One is, clearly, you have to deal with the crimes that are being committed today. You have to educate people on how not to be victims tomorrow. And most importantly, if we can stop or at least significantly reduce the number of people who become criminals in the future, that would be a critical component of the overall crime prevention picture. In fact, in Elk Grove, a couple of years ago, we paid for, as a police department, introduced, it's kind of a daycare program. It runs for a couple of weeks in the summer, targeted specifically at 4-year-olds. It's called Safety Town. It's a system and a program designed to transition kids to kindergarten. But it's very limited. It's nowhere near as comprehensive or as important as this, which is a true education effort. A lot of numbers have been thrown around about the 1 to 7, 1 to 8, but I ask you to think about what the cost of criminality is at the other end. Simply the cost of incarcerating someone. After their release, the cost of rehabilitating them. We also know from the research that the rehabilitative efforts of a person who's in their 30s, 40s, or 50s, no matter how much money you throw at it, is only in the range of 10 to 20%. 10 to 20% of those people will ultimately be rehabilitated to the point where they will not commit crime going forward. If you take, however, a juvenile offender, particularly a young juvenile offender, that is exactly reversed. We get almost 80% success out of early intervention in juvenile criminals. But now we're talking about even earlier than that. How much can we save if we prevent those people from becoming criminals even to begin with? We know that roughly 60 or 70% of all crime is committed by children between the ages of 15 and 25. That's a large, large number, and that research goes back 60, 70 years and isn't just in the United States. That's all over the world. If you look at the people who become criminals, especially when you look at them at that age when they are criminals, Typically, there are a bunch of risk factors in their background. Interestingly, you've heard about some of them here: poverty, single-parent households, growing up in bad neighborhoods, even malnourishment. All of those things are considered risk factors for that group of people to become criminals in the future. Now we're looking at that 15 to 25-year-old group. Research has also shown, however, there are protective factors. Some of those protective factors include things like a good educational program, success in school, especially early school. In the case of young boys, a male role model that in many of those families is missing. So that's kind of a long-about way of saying that the educators, while they're certainly talking about success in education and ultimately success in society, our own experience is that that same experience changes criminality at the other end. And in the long run, this will mean fewer criminals and less crime. So I'm very pleased to see this legislation introduced in California and support its passage. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Means a lot that you're here to this effort. Thank you very, very much. Happy to stand for any questions. I'll take the easy ones. I'll turn over the tough ones to one of my colleagues. Okay. Yes.
Could you spell out more on the cost of this program expansion, and will it come out of the budget surplus?
Well, let's talk about what the budget surplus is. And again, we all recognize that money needs to go in a rainy day fund, that money needs to be used to pay down debt, but the Prop 98 numbers themselves are instructive. The current year, when you combine 12, 13, 13, 14, the Prop 98 surplus one time is about $4.4 billion. The 2014-15 Prop 98 surplus, a lot of it ongoing, is, I believe, $7.1 billion. We are talking here about a $198 million investment in year one that will ramp up over 5 years to less than $1 billion. I can defend that amount on many grounds. I think it is modest, given the incredible return on investment. I cited the study earlier about the special ed placements and the money saved with just a 10% reduction in special ed placements. There are other similar statistics. But we will ramp this up responsibly, and the cost to expand the other 3/4 for 4-year-olds should be less than $1 billion.
You said 4.4 billion over 12, 13, 13, 14. What was the other number?
7.1. 14, 15.
Just in 14, 15.
Just in 14, 15. And a lot of that, I don't have the exact breakdown, but a lot of that is ongoing Prop 98 money. So it is a modest investment, given the fact that we have gone through the hard times, as my colleagues have said. And now is the time to put something back, to reinvest, to build, but to do so in a modest way. If the choice was, do this or put money in a rainy day fund, do this or pay down debt, we would have a difficult choice to make. And reasonable people might be able to disagree about which are the higher priorities. We can do all three of those things, and we will.
Speaking of the higher priorities part, we're sitting here 3 days before the governor releases his budget. There is some symbolism to having you put this out there before we see what he wants to spend money on. When you have to prioritize through the year, you know you have to make political choices about what you can afford. Is this at the top of the list?
Yes. I can't think of anything more important. Yes, it's at the top of the list. Now, I'm not going to say it's our only priority. I mean, again, we have done this before, and we've done it well. Even last year, you look at last year, we were able to take that first year of surplus and divide in an approximate way that I have described our priorities. We invested in some targeted areas that were very important. And we aggressively paid down debt. Now, this time we'll add, in all probability, the rainy day fund, but the surplus is larger than it was last year. So we can do all three of these things. This is, to me, at the top. There are some other things in the health and human services area, in the education area, that you're darn right, we're going to want to tackle and take on. But I just can't think of anything more significant than this advance that we're describing here today.
Senator, what sort of conversations have you had with the governor? I mean, do you expect to see this in the proposal or something along these lines in the proposal he puts forward?
I don't know that we will see this in January or not. I've had good conversations with the governor. But, you know, I've been doing this long enough to know how it plays out. January is the opening act. We put our, you know, we put down our flags and we outline the budget debate for the year. That's what we're doing. That's what he will do in January. And then, assuming the continued economic recovery and the kind of surplus numbers that I have described, we will have then the opportunities to be able to do some good things. And so whether or not this is in a January proposal is less important than where we end up come budget time.
You're talking about transitional kindergarten today, but there's another district in Sacramento that right now doesn't have enough heat for the schools.
Read that today.
And wanted to get your thoughts on that. What can be done?
It's got to be fixed. I'm going to reach out today to the Twin Rivers superintendent, and I've met him. I have faith in him. He's new. That's got to be fixed. I mean, obviously, it's kids need to learn in environment where they're not cold, and that was very disturbing to read. So I'll have more once I talk to him. But it's got to be fixed. It's got to be fixed right away.
Senator, can you explain what would happen with the current state preschool program, and how that would change?
Well, Tom, you want to take that one? Go ahead.
Again, we have the chance to bring another couple 100,000 4-year-olds into the system. Many of those now are part of a system of early learning that includes quality childcare and state-run preschools. So we'll see a shift of 4-year-olds that are currently enrolled, although that is a very limited portion of the enormous need that Senator Mitchell talked about. So the other opportunity then is to provide some wraparound services, because we know 3 hours, isn't everything, and it's moving kids around. To have parents be able to take advantage of this, how convenient can we make it? And if there's a chance to use some of these current preschool dollars to have the second session of the day where those kids maybe on campus at an elementary school could have the advantage of another 3 hours of care and learning. The other opportunity, as Senator Laura pointed out, is being able to move and allow some more help, more of those current dollars to help with 3-year-olds getting into the system. So I think those are two tremendous opportunities that lie ahead.
Mr. Torlakson, while you're there, would you also like to address the Twin Rivers situation?
Yes, and saying, number one, the schools, we're in emergency status for 4 years, 5 years running. Many of them deferred maintenance. Many of them had a lot of issues that they couldn't address, that they wanted to keep the classroom size at a sensible level and so forth. So yes, it should be, as the Pro Tem mentioned, addressed immediately. We can't have learning in an environment like that that is cold. At the same time, we need to look at the need to replenish the state bond accounts on modernization, rehabilitation. The voters have consistently supported bond measures. I think that's another part of something we should look at as an investment so that we can have some long-range dollars to help with the infrastructure in our schools.
Is there a potential that this will take away money from other Prop 98 programs? I mean, I know there's a lot of money coming into Prop 98 over the next couple of years, but what if that contracts over time? Could
the era of cutting education in California is over. We're not cutting. The question is, can we prudently reinvest? And that's what we're looking at doing. We're not cutting.
And how many kids are in transitional kindergarten right now?
Well, it's how many? Do we know how many kids are in TK, right? How many kids in transitional kindergarten now? 120,000 are currently eligible. How many are actually in? It's a relatively new program, and it's starting by cohort, right? You go back a month at a time from December.
Our estimates are close to 40,000.
About 40,000. That's my estimate too.
So do you anticipate these costs leveling off at some point? In 5 years it'll be $990 million. In 10 years will it be close to $2 billion? Or do you ever see this leveling?
Well, remember, it is a required offering, but it's voluntary for the parent, just like the existing TK program itself. Based upon the take-up rates that we have seen in other states, we think it is reasonable that this can be kept under $1 billion at full implementation. But again, we're going to start with less than $200 million a year.
But I guess having said that, not to be slightly contrarian here, but
please.
to call it universal, it's not universal at the beginning. It's a phase-in. It's a 5-year phase-in. Is that a recognition that you don't think you should spend $1 billion immediately?
It's a recognition that we have multiple responsibilities, and it's better to build something rather than try to do it all at one time, which sometimes is the instinct. And we think it'll be a better program, by the way. Better program because there's going to be the need for more teachers. There's going to be need for associate teachers. We think it'll be a better program by building it up in the way that we suggest.
I asked that, if I can follow, I asked that just simply because, as Ms. Mitchell said, Senator Mitchell said, kids don't get a do-over. There are kids who won't get access to it because you're ramping it up that way.
Well, I mean, look, this is what the purpose of the legislative process is. If we can, through the debate, if it's clear that we should and can ramp it up faster than the 5 years, certainly we'll be open to that.
On the teachers front, is there a sense that are there teachers available to fill these positions, even the ones that would be required next year?
I think there are. Tom, maybe you want to address that in terms of the teacher.
It'll be a challenge, but I think it's a tremendous opportunity, and the current preschool teachers who may want to shift and upgrade, they have 25 hours of professional training and early learning, and then they would build, with a degree on top of that and make sure they have a Bachelor of Arts or Science and then go on and get the same equivalent of a teaching credential. So it will be a challenge. We've seen a drop in the number of teacher applicants from something like 70,000 a year in California to something like 25,000. But that's partly because there haven't been jobs and there have been a lot of layoffs. So I think this will be attractive to a lot of people to come into the profession. And a pipeline, frankly, another dividend could be a pipeline that's created from the preschools to the teaching profession.
Better to do it right. Last two questions, okay? Then we're gonna.
For every dollar spent on this program, you get $7 back. Where does the number come from, and how do you gauge $7 back? Okay.
I'll give you the source.
All right.
I'll give you the source.
In
Last
some
question.
of the write-ups on the Smithian bill, the LAO raised concerns. One, that it's just the 1/4 of the students. They thought
Correct.
that was rude. And then they said, why shouldn't this just be tailored to the low-income, the English learning kids? Why should this? Why is this broadened to everyone?
Well, because we can provide it to every child. And because public education is a universal ideal and a universal commitment in this state. And while targeting these investments to low-income kids, to me, and I think my colleagues, comes first, every 4-year-old can and should be able to benefit from getting an early start. I was in Switzerland over the fall, and we were there to study linked learning and career education. But one of the things that was very clear to me is that they're able to succeed with their high school approach because kids don't fall behind. And why don't kids fall behind? They start school at 4 years old. That's a big reason. I think it's the right approach for all kids. Thank you all very much for coming. We appreciate it. Okay.